I support the continuation of the hearing on the Ag Cluster ordinance. I am opposed to the ordinance as it was proposed today, affecting almost 1 million acres in our county. And I consider this an assault on the private property rights. We hear a lot about private property rights. I sometimes think that the constituencies of San Luis Obispo and California and our nation truly do not understand what private property rights means. It is our land, it's our buildings, it's our material goods, it's us, and our means by which we support ourselves. Without property rights, we no longer have the means of our own survival, no longer free. I want to go on the record that there are 2 philosophies today in the world regarding private property rights. And it's amazing because all we have to do is look at the U.S. Declaration of Independence and the UN Declaration of Human Rights. We know that there's hundreds of countries, governments that belong to the UN, but very few believe in what is declared in the Declaration of Independence. Now, the purpose of government, according to the Declaration of Independence, is to protect the natural or unalienable rights of each individual. In short, you're born with rights. Government exists to protect them. You and the product of your labor belong to you. Unfortunately, in the Declaration of Human Rights for the United Nations, it states that it controls the individual for the greater good of a global community. I quote, "Rights and freedoms may in no case be exercised contrary to the purpose and principles of the United Nations." In other words, government grants, restricts, or withdraws your rights according to its needs. You and the product of your labor belong to the community. So I'm pleased to know there's a continuation on this issue, and I just ask that we protect our private property rights and embrace them. Thank you.
More than one more attempt by this board to violate our constitutional and inalienable rights, which in part are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The proposed rules, among other things, limit each parcel to 1 single resident and eliminates all secondary dwellings. That leaves no way to accommodate aging parents, sons, daughters, and other relatives needing a home or shelter. For hundreds of years, our farm families lived, worked together, which helped strengthen family life and values. Why is this board determined to attack the very traditional part of rural American heritage, particularly when our current economy is driving aging parents, sons, and daughters back to their families because they can't afford to buy or rent and don't have a job? The CEQA review is not current as it does not take into account the county's adoption of a number of new restrictions prohibiting the subdivision of land which overlaps much of the same area included in the revived Ag Cluster Subdivision proposed revisions. The cumulative impact of the Paso Water Basin lot creation prohibitions, changes to the transfer of development credit ordinance, and the adoption of many restrictive provisions in the conservation and open space element of the general plan should now be considered. I request the Board of Supervisors reject the amendments and the flawed EIR not be certified. Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. Steve Johns. I'm speaking on behalf today of the San Luis Obispo County Cattlemen's Association. As all of you are well aware, the San Luis County Cattlemen's Association has a long-standing record of being against any policy that infringes on personal property rights. We are especially against any policy that reduces property values. We agree with your decision to take more time so that more landowners can be informed of this new policy. And with that said, I want to go on record that the members of the San Luis Obispo County Cattlemen's Association are against this new Ag Cluster amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Johns.
And this whole thing reminds me of a passage out of Elie Wiesel's book, Night, where we were introduced to Moish the Beetle, who was a spiritual leader in Elie Wiesel's community. He was a transient, he was not native, and at one point the Nazis came in and they took the transients and they took them out of the community. And those people who lived in the community reassured themselves and said, that will never happen to us, we don't need to worry. The Nazis took these transients a couple of 100 miles away, they had them dig a ditch, they had them climb in the ditch, and then they shot them dead. Moish the beetle was shot in the leg and survived. He came back to his community and he said, this is what they did, and they did not believe him. 2 years later, when the Nazis came in and rounded up Elie Wiesel and his family, Moish the beetle wept as he went through the streets saying, I tried to tell you. I tried to tell you. Those of us who are just people living our lives do not understand, with all due respect, Mr. Gibson, that you feel that you have the right to come in and take the value from my property. That never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that the Board of Supervisors who are supposed to represent us have that much perspective of their job, that you can make a decision that radically affects not only my life, but the potential care that I can offer my mother-in-law who has Alzheimer's, and the potential future that I can offer my daughter who has special needs, because if this passes, I can't even build a house where my daughter could live independently and still give me the opportunity to take care of her, which is specifically why we bought the property. We have no means. We are not wealthy. We bought property because we believe in this country and because the property rights are what's guaranteed to us. It's heartbreaking.
Thank you, Ms. Lee.
I understand that, but I want you to know it's heartbreaking.
Mr. Gilbert?
Gentlemen of the Board of Supervisors, I'm opposed to the Ag Clusters. My name is Ted Gilbert, and I am a member of the California Cattlemen's Association. And I live in Paso Robles, and I'm registered to vote in the county of San Luis Obispo, but I also have property in Monterey County. The agriculture productive area that we live in is a beautiful and a wonderful area, much of which has been deposited below sea level in the past. And it's on the top of the mountains out of San Miguel, and things change. This old globe is a thing that is never stable completely. It changes completely at various times. Contrary to the junk science that is the basis of AB 32, which, as I understand it, is the reason for this Ag Cluster, I will say thankfully that the most powerful and wonderful greenhouse gas would not be able to stop the cooling of Earth. And if water vapor and CO2 were not present, the temperature of the Earth would probably be about 40 degrees below zero in 30 to 40 hours. Up at 30,000 feet, if you're on an airplane, why, that's the temperature there. But the greenhouse gases are very important, and CO2 is probably the most important, so that plants can grow, and through photosynthesis, that's the way we get our oxygen. If you like breathing, why, you need CO2 in the atmosphere, and it's a cycle. It goes around. The carbon is consumed through things we eat.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Lisa Bedrogi, and I'm a land use and public policy advisor. Most of you know me as the government affairs coordinator for the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance. I did take this item to our board of directors, and because we really don't have a dog in the fight in this issue, I recommended that we don't participate in this, because your board of supervisors already passed an absolute prohibition on all land subdivisions in September. So therefore, if you are in the Paso Robles groundwater basin, you can't apply for an Ag Cluster Subdivision. However, in my new capacity for the Central Coast Wine Growers Association, I also took this to our executive committee, and we do have concerns with this ordinance because it does affect all of San Luis Obispo County. And to that effect, we are here today to object to the passing of this ordinance. This ordinance was intended and does allow for the protection of 95% of land for agricultural purposes on individual properties. The ordinance allows property owners to monetize the real estate value without having to sell the farm, ultimately preserving open space and ag lands. It is a fallacy that any agricultural cluster ordinance will have any relevancy should the amendments be passed. We appreciate you addressing the question we raised in transparency of government. By continuing this item, we do encourage you to either not approve it at all today, or if you are continuing it, this should go through the economic strategic planning process, which is available now, which was a co-partnership between private and public, and you all have been very involved in that process, but this would be an excellent opportunity to utilize that economic strategic plan process to evaluate the real economic impacts associated with this ordinance. I do have my letter to submit to you today. Thank you.